Hi, this is Cassie Brighter, and this is another episode of Smart Sluts. Welcome, and thanks for joining me in this journey where we talk about women's sexuality and better ways to be lovers and better ways to enjoy and experience our sexuality. With me today, I have somebody who specializes in clinical sexology and specifically in how to do magic with the penis, ways to deal with penis and with how to handle penile erectile dysfunction and penile rehabilitation and several other things related to the function and health of the penis. But we're also going to be talking about a number of other things. And let me see if I get this right. You're a clinical sexologist, you're a surrogate, you're a doctor, is that correct?
That is all correct. And the penis whisperer, yes.
The penis whisperer. I love that. Tanginika Cuascud. Thank you so much for joining me.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I love your pendant. Where is that from? That is amazing.
Oh, well, I made it. The pendant was already made, and I put it on this. So, yes, every once in a while I make my own jewelry, but I cannot claim a lot of creativity on this one.
It's magnificent. So let's talk about the penis. And maybe a few months ago, I recorded this 1-hour interview with a gal who was talking to me about erectile dysfunction, and she was talking to me about how to deal with men. We had a previous conversation about this, and then she wanted to have me on her podcast talking about, she called it the softer side of men, and it was a pun, of course.
Of course.
About how men are also expected to be hard in terms of the way that they are supposed to express their masculinity in life, and how that can be a burden and a yoke for them as well. So when men come to you and they face challenges with the performance of their penis, what kind of state of mind do you find them in? What kind of emotions are they displaying? How do they manifest with you?
Definitely what they experience, the first thing that they experience is a lot of anxiety. Mm-hmm. When that penis doesn't work for the first time is a signal of failure. So they take it very personally, and even their partners can take it very personally. It doesn't matter if it's women or men that they're having sex with. The other person also takes it very personally, and is also the failure of the other person as a lover. So the first thing that they experience is that sense of doom and failure. They feel like they're frauds because they're walking around, some of them in high success, having had a lot of achievements at work, professional careers, education, but not being able to perform sexually, meaning penis in a vagina in the bedroom. And a lot of anxiety. So when they are going to be involved in intimacy, they start having almost like panic attacks every time. Some of them avoid sex altogether just because of that fear of the mishap and having to face that truth that they're not as adequate, quote unquote, as they thought they had to be or as they were in the past. So there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of distress, a lot of feelings of sadness, and a sense of loss for many of them, because we have to remember that their penises are attached to their identity and their self and worth. And so if that doesn't work, they feel like a complete failure.
That last sentence is really poignant, and I think it's important. I'm speaking to a female audience primarily. I think it's really important that we become aware of this, because I've seen this issue trivialized. I've seen this issue made light of. I've seen women react in anger or frustration at the time when their man can't achieve an erection or loses his erection, and I want you to get a sense of how harmful this could be to your partner.
Absolutely. Actually, just yesterday I had somebody in here who has a beautiful wife, and he's not able to perform that way, and the wife always responds to a failure. What is wrong with you?
Oh my God.
What is wrong with you? Why can't you do this? What is wrong with you? And so this is very diminishing, not only he knows that he can't perform for whatever reason that we're still exploring, but now he has trauma attached to this event. So every time he wants to be intimate, he has to prove his masculinity, and she is going to shun him and shame him if he doesn't perform. So this is a vicious cycle. And this is very detrimental, not only for him, but for both.
And there's something there that's pretty important to tackle. And this is not about body parts, but it's really important to convey this. Sex happens best. The best way to experience sex is when you are completely and utterly vulnerable, when you open yourself up sensually, sensorially, emotionally. The more you open yourself up, the more you enjoy sex. But for that, you need to be vulnerable. In order to be vulnerable, you need to trust the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct.
If somebody talks to you like that, how can you trust them?
How can you trust them? How can you open up? How can you be vulnerable? And so the best escape is avoidance of the other person, or doing some other activities that are not going to lead to this shameful walk that they're going to engage on with their partner if they do. And so then the partners ask themselves, like, why aren't you coming to me? Mm-hmm. Why aren't you intimate with me? And they don't realize that they're also part of the problem. And also, we need to understand how the brain works. That's something that I am very focused on, because I am also a neuroscientist junior. Mm-hmm. And so for me, telling them how the brain works is very important, because then they can understand it. When you have an event like this, you had a mishap, you couldn't perform, and then your partner is shaming you for it, your brain is going into trauma mode, and it's going to prevent your erections from happening the next time you are with this person, because this person means a threat. And your cortisol levels will go up, your adrenaline will go up, and those are antagonists for erections. So a brain in anxiety and panic cannot produce erections. So this is a vicious cycle.
It is, yeah. And I had remembered reading something. My brain works in weird ways, and I make connections and analogies. I hope you bear with me. One analogy that I'm thinking about is, I remember reading in a book that something important for sex to be really enjoyable is to make your bed your sanctuary, to not bring work to bed, to not have your office in the bedroom, to not have all of these things in the bedroom that remind you of tasks and responsibilities and duties, and to be able to get to float in this cloud of sensuality, right? Mm-hmm. What you're saying speaks a lot to that too, because if the sexual moment is going to be associated with pressure and with recrimination and with antagonism from your partner, then that's bound to push away any kind of sensuality, and you're going to feel anxiety and pressure at the time.
Yes, it's a turnoff, and women have to understand that it would happen to them as well. Mm-hmm. It's just that our anatomies probably allow for us to have sex even when we don't want to, because we can be passive receivers. But it is the same as with men. If we don't want sex, if we don't feel connected, if we don't feel safe, it's very hard for us to be sensual, sexual, erotic in that moment. So same thing for both. Men don't have a magic click that they can turn themselves on like that. Even if you feel like the physiology should work that way, men also have to be connected. And thank you so much for bringing that illustration, because it really depicts what a sexual and intimate encounter should be like. It should be in a safe environment, and everything about that environment should speak safety and comfort, and it should be welcoming. If it's something that is going to create harm or be perceived as something that would create harm to my psyche, I am not going to be there, or I am going to do it very reluctantly and probably not successfully.
Yes, absolutely. And something that strikes me under the hood of the phrase "what's wrong with you," Because in my opinion, if there's a dysfunction in the bedroom, the elephant in the room is either something's wrong with you or something could be wrong with me.
And ultimately, yes, and ultimately that means that something is wrong with us.
That's
because
true.
there's no you or me in this relationship. I mean, it becomes us. And so if you are having a problem or if I am the problem, we're both having a problem. And so placing blame doesn't really help. Now, taking responsibility and ownership does, because it's going to allow for the couple to move forward, to seek help, and to get over whatever it is that is causing this mishap successfully and productively, instead of placing blame that at the end of the day is not going to help me. As a woman, and this is a message that I have for all those smart sluts of yours out there, that sex is not for the other person. Sex is for me. When I am in sex, when I am going to engage in a sexual relationship with somebody, I am doing it for me. I'm not doing it to please somebody else. I'm not doing it because I fear losing that person, or I shouldn't. I am not doing it to score some points and not to get material stuff, although women have sex for many, many different reasons. But I am here for me. Even if I am given sex in exchange for something else, I need to procure my own enjoyment and pleasure. And it should be a pleasurable event. So when you're in a couple, when you're in a relationship, thinking that you're having sex to please the man because they're the ones who want it and they're the ones who are always right or should be, that's a disservice to you as well. You should be there for you. The ride is for you. You should be there for your own enjoyment. And I show up for myself. And that makes for the relationship to be even better than if it's a one-sided equation.
Yeah, that's a mistake that we women commonly make, that we put ourselves in a pleaser mode and we're trying to satisfy the needs of the man. And the thing that the man finds most stimulating and sensual is when we are crazy, horny, and enjoying ourselves, and they get to witness that.
Of course, of course. I mean, imagine having sex with a corpse.
Yes.
Although some people may enjoy that, but that's for a different kind of show. When you are with your partner, you want to know that your partner is there enjoying himself and having a good time and having the ride of his life. And he wants to know the same thing about me. He doesn't want me just there sighing and barely breathing, barely awake. He wants me to be there with gusto and show up fully equipped and fully present.
Yes, absolutely. And what occurs to me is that when a woman does place blame on her partner, I think that there might be a deflection going on, where what we really don't want to admit or don't want to say is we're afraid that it could be something wrong with us. We're afraid that we're getting too old, too fat, too unattractive, and because of that he's not getting an erection, that it's our fault because we're not stimulating enough.
True. And many women also do it as a way to reinforce the avoidance. So if when you come to me, I tell you what is wrong with you, you're not the one that you used to be, this is not fun anymore, I am pushing him away even further. And sometimes this is done on purpose. So instead of addressing the issue, I am making sure that the abyss that is opening between us is even deeper every time I do that. And therefore, I protect myself from having sex, because you're not going to want to have sex with me if I continue with this tactic.
That's really interesting, and that kind of takes us back to this this thing about a woman really enjoying sex rather than doing it to satisfy the husband. Do you find that in long-term couples, a rut forms sometimes where the woman is just going along to satisfy the husband instead of truly enjoying the sex?
Oh, definitely. Many, many, many times. Also, I find women, I will go even further, I find women who have told me in my face, point blank, if I don't want to have sex anymore, he shouldn't want to have sex anymore.
Oh, God.
And I say, why is that? And I remember having this conversation with multiple women, but I remember one in specific. She was about 52 years old, so this is a very young woman still. Mm-hmm. And I would want to have sex until the day I die. Actually, that's how I want to go, but I digress. Anyways, but she was 52 years old, and she didn't want to have sex anymore. Her husband was older, mm-hmm. and he enjoyed watching porn and masturbating to porn, and apparently he enjoyed other extracurricular activities. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, he's too old for that. I don't want to have sex, and he shouldn't want to have sex either. And I said, well, that is not right. And she said, well, if we're married and he loves me, if I don't want to have sex, he shouldn't want it either.
That is a crazy position.
I found that to be the case for many women. This is not an isolated case. Uh-huh. And they feel very betrayed. If I don't want to have sex and you want to have sex, either with me or satisfy yourself sexually by other means, this is a betrayal of me. But I feel like they're the ones betraying the sanctity of their relationship when they don't want to address the problem, they don't want to solve it, and they want to stop and prevent their husbands or partners from having sex as well. So when the sex dies for them, sex should die altogether for both of them. This is very unfair.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting that it occurs to me that one of the flaws of a monogamous arrangement, a long-term monogamous arrangement, especially one that begins really early in life, maybe at the time that they're both virgins or they're both beginning to be sexual, is that there's not enough life experience for them to truly learn how to have sex. Having sex is a skill. Having sex is, if you play tennis all the time, you're going to be very good at tennis. If you drive all the time, you're going to be a good driver. And if two people who hardly know anything about sex get married and then they have clumsy sex together, they might have clumsy sex together for the next 20 years and get really bored of it.
Oh my goodness, yes. And if they do the same thing over and over again, they will get bored. And that's also something that I say. I love spaghetti and meatballs. I love it. And I think in my head that I can never get tired of it. But it's not true. If they serve me spaghetti and meatballs the same way, the same time, in the same plate, in the same place at the table every single day, I will get bored. So same thing with sex. If you do not grow in sex, if you do the same things every day, it's not going to get better. Sex is 90% imagination and creativity, because the most important sex organ is the brain.
Exactly,
so
yes.
It all starts here. It all starts with that fantasy, that desire, those images that you have, and what are you going to bring to the table as far as variety. That's the spice of sex. Mechanical sex, anybody can do it, and that's why we all love masturbating, because it's very efficient. We do something, we know how to do it, we know how to get ourselves off, and we might as well do it by ourselves if the other person doesn't provide for an environment in which creativity can flourish.
Absolutely.
And that's
well put.
Yes.
By the way, one thing that occurs to me is that it's really important to have a lover who's effusive, because that's what's going to give us this sense that this is going well and that I'm being desirable and that this is a good sexual experience. I have sex with several different genders, and so what I find is that women are conditioned to be really effusive and vocal. Men are generally really quiet, and I have to cajole them into speaking up and into showing their enthusiasm verbally. And I think that if we are defaulting to reading a man's enthusiasm strictly by the hardness of their erection, then we're going to get really disappointed. We're going to think that the feedback is poor if he loses his erection. But the men need to be able to vocalize.
Yes, I show men, I teach men, I coach men into being vocal and expressing themselves during sex. And it doesn't have to be dirty talk. Some people are afraid of dirty talk, and some people are afraid of, whatever, the cursing and all those big words that I actually like during sex. Some people can get intimidating, but it's about providing feedback. How is this going for you? How is this working?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do I do next? What do you want from me? What do we do? And kind of co-creating this sexual experience each time. And yes, we have misconceptions about what constitutes arousal, and the quality of that arousal or the quantity of that arousal. With men is the firmness of those erections, and with women is that moisture and wetness. And that has nothing to do with the experience many times, because again, if the brain is engaged and if you communicate assertively, that experience can be very fulfilling and a lot of fun, regardless of how the penis is and how the vagina is, because there could be many, many reasons why a vagina is not wet and why a penis is not erect.
Absolutely.
And it has
ladies, by the way, don't think that it's flattering that a man has a hard-on, and that it's not flattering if he doesn't, because a man can get a hard-on while driving to work thinking about golf. For no reason.
Correct. And so we need to create new paradigms when it comes to sex. I think ultimately, regardless of the work that I do, that's what I actually do, is help people redefine or acquire or create a new paradigm for sex and pleasure.
Could you say that again? That's really powerful. To reacquire a paradigm, a new paradigm for sex and pleasure, right?
Yes, that is correct. To think about those endless possibilities that you didn't have before, that you didn't consider before, that you didn't even know that existed before. And instead of having this very limited paradigm of sex, having an expansive model that will allow you to grow and migrate and move and dance and sway in many, many different realms and create many different things with what you have. And once that creativity is unleashed, then these people are able to grow and to have better pleasurable experiences for themselves, and obviously provide better pleasurable environments for the partners that they choose to be with sexually, and to tap into that erotic potential regardless of what's happening. If they want it up here, they can have it in their bodies.
Yeah, and so now I have another video where I spoke extensively about the way that somebody can have fun sex with a flaccid penis, because it's not imperative to have an erection in order to have fun. There's a lot of fun things that you can do. But
absolutely.
I also want to talk about some of the areas of expertise that you specifically focus on. You have something called wave therapy, and I'm fascinated by that. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, shockwave therapy is done with a machine. It's not invasive, and it doesn't create any pain. There's no recovery or downtime. And basically, it's a machine delivering sound waves deep into the tissue that regenerate blood vessels and tissue to bring back that functionality. And shockwave therapy is not a new technology. It was invented for orthopedics and actually for kidney stones back in the day in the 80s. And then it occurred to somebody to put in their penises, and magic started happening. I do not know who the subject zero is. I don't think he's coming forward, and it doesn't really matter. But it is a great technology because it allows for regeneration and renewal, and those erections can come back, and they can be spontaneous without the need to use medication with horrible side effects that some people don't want or don't like, or sticking yourself with a needle, which some people don't find that to be attractive either, and they can also come with risks and side effects. And so I love the shockwave therapy machine because it delivers what it promises. It's not for all kinds of ED, so I always evaluate people or individuals with penises who are suffering from erectile dysfunction before recommending that technology, but it delivers what it promises when used correctly on the right cases of erectile dysfunction.
This is fascinating. I had never heard of that. How many treatments do you think that it takes before one sees a result?
Some people see the results right away with the first treatment, but it's recommended between 6 and 12 treatments.
Uh-huh.
So it depends on the severity of that erectile dysfunction. Obviously, somebody who will have mild to moderate will probably need less treatments, and somebody who has a little bit more of a longer occurring erectile dysfunction will need some more treatments. But it is 20 minutes. It's really easy. There's no, as I said, there's no downtime. There's no surgery. There's no pain involved. And they can just go about their life right after the treatment. And for many, they start seeing the results right away. And for some others, it takes 3 to 4 weeks. But when they start seeing those erections happening again, they get very happy.
Oh, I imagine, yes. But I mean, this is for clinical cases. Something I really would want to emphasize is I'm middle-aged now, so some of my lovers are middle-aged as well. When I'm with a lover who is in his 30s, I will find that he has a really ready erection. And with a 50-year-old, the erection might wane or the erection might take a while to surface. And that headspace is really important to be able to understand that you're still safe and it's still okay, because the moment that the man starts getting in his head and feeling like a failure, then there's very little that you can do.
There's no coming back from that. Yes, absolutely. And so my focus is always on pleasure rather than that penis to be erect and the finish line. And some men start their relationships, their sex, with the finish line. They're worried about, am I going to be able to get erect? Am I going to be able to maintain that erection throughout? Am I going to be able to ejaculate? Not too soon, but not too late. So those are kind of the 3 concerns that men have when they have sex, and they miss on everything else just because they're so worried about it. And again, that anxiety and that stress will kill the erection right then, because the neurochemistry of stress is an antagonist of erections. They cannot happen at the same time. So either you're stressed and worried and anxious, or you're relaxed and can have sex. You cannot have both.
That's very, very good. And on premature ejaculation, can we please get rid of the bases? Because it doesn't have to be the sequence of you finger the girl, then you lick the girl, hopefully you will. She goes down on him, and then he inserts his penis, and that's going to be the finish line, and then he goes to sleep, because that model is really, really faulty. Because if he has a premature ejaculation, if he has an early ejaculation, the game is over, and the game doesn't have to be over at that point. He could lick the girl for a good 40 minutes after he ejaculates.
Well, I call that the 4-step sex program, where usually everybody is, not everybody, but probably most people, I would assert, are on the 4-step sex program. You kiss, you fondle some boobs, you go genitals, oral or manual, go penetration, somebody ejaculates, usually the man, sex is over. So you follow those 4 steps over and over and over again. And yes, that is very monotonous. It is just not the right formula for pleasure. Sex doesn't have to end when the man ejaculates, just like it doesn't have to end when I have an orgasm. Sex is something that is reoccurring, and also sex is something that should be happening 24/7. If you're in an intimate relationship, it could happen with the details outside of sex. One of my colleagues calls it the non-sex sex. So all the other things that are happening, the sexting, the little notes, the little looks, the little, the hugs, the kisses, the tender loving moments, but also kind of the steamy exchanges that happen, not in the bedroom. So sex is something that should be always going on. You should always be turned on yourself for sex. Sex is not something that, okay, so I got home, it's 8 o'clock, it's time for sex. Okay, sure, let me get undressed and let's have sex. that's not how sex happens. Sex is kind of a continuum. It's a line that never stops, and it should never stop for people. And so it's easier to come to that relationship when you are already turned on, when you're doing other things, and not when you're expected to come with the fireworks when it's time for sex at any given point during the day.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a little priming, and the anticipation could be a really big part of the intensity of the sex down the line. This is gold. I really appreciate you talking about the continuum of sex and how it should be something that you just don't flick on and off like a switch.
Like a switch, exactly. And talking about penises, one of my other colleagues, she posted a meme a few years ago. She said, if you're worried about going limp, remember, fingers don't go limp.
Yes, they never do. And don't be afraid of vibrators. Don't be afraid of sex toys. They could be to your advantage. This has been wonderful. We're coming to the end of the show, but I'd like to ask you, do you have any final words of wisdom for us smart sluts?
Yes, all those smart sluts out there. My last piece of advice is learn about yourself, learn about your body, learn about your pleasure, what triggers you, what tickles you, what causes you to have fun, so you can direct the other person to pleasure you. And when you show up for sex, show up, be present, be mindful, and enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. This is a wonderful point to end the segment on. Thank you so much, Tanginika. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Cassie. And I hope I will be in your program soon again.
Absolutely. And big hug to all smart sluts out there.
Yes. Bye.